Hello, everyone. My name is Rick Blakeway. I'm so sorry I am not with you in person for what I know will be a lively and informative session on the issue of damp and mould, an issue which has clearly been in real focus and has led to a lot of consideration and reflection on what is an appropriate response for social landlords to address this issue. I want to just share with you some of my thoughts on what I've seen in recent months, based on both my casework, our evaluation of the way in which landlords had responded to the original Spotlight report that we published in October 2021 on damp and mould, and also more widely on some of the things which I've seen emerging in the sector. So let me start with a recognition of the tremendous efforts that I know some landlords are going to in terms of thinking about how they approach and address damp and mould. This has led to some really encouraging best practice from the use of technology and also landlords thinking about how they what investment they should bring in and how they should approach the issue overall. And so I really want to recognise that, and there'll be many people in this room today who are obviously there to discover what others are doing, and to share their own experiences to support others as well. And I hugely welcome that. And I think it's excellent news that ARK has brought folk together to talk about this issue. So let me make the following comments. So the first thing is that the damp and mould report that we published almost 16 months ago, 18 months ago, was an opportunity, we think, a tool to support landlords in some of that development. It set out very clearly our view that landlords needed to place greater priority and focus on this issue. They needed to move from being reactive to being proactive. They needed to take a zero-tolerance approach in response. I always recognise that damp and mould will occur for different reasons in different properties, but zero tolerance is about the attitude and response when it does. We emphasised in particular the importance of landlords taking responsibility and not placing unfair onus on the resident or inferring blame on the resident for the situation. So taking responsibility, thinking about communication, thinking about use of language were very, very important points. And a lot of that distills into culture, which I'll talk about more in a moment, but culture and attitudes when it comes to responding to an issue which we have seen in our casework can cause huge distress, inconvenience, sense of embarrassment for residents. And obviously, we also saw the tragic circumstances in Rochdale around our Bishak's untimely and preventable death. So those core components of that report remain very relevant, we believe, in the way in which landlords should handle this issue and extract learning from complaints, both that they see themselves, that we investigate, and that we share across the sector when considering how to tackle the issue. So I want to make a few points to kind of reflect on what's happened since that report. So we published a few days ago our evaluation, which was based on the response that different landlords made to that original report and the 26 recommendations within it. Last September, we approached 40 landlords to encourage them to share with us their learning and any changes that they'd made. 26 landlords responded. The 40 landlords were made up across our jurisdictions, so different geographies, different types, different sizes. Some of those landlords will have been identified in the original report of having particularly high volumes of investigations going through the Ombudsman relating to damp and mould. Just over half of landlords responded to that request. I think it's disappointing, but I also recognise that given what's happened in Rochdale, that many landlords since then, if they hadn't been already, have considered doing a lot more to develop their response. In addition to that evaluation, I've also obviously seen the cases that we've investigated since the original Spotlight report was published. And whilst we don't uphold all cases, we do uphold most cases relating to damp and mould. And there are clearly some common patterns which were reflected in that Spotlight report that are still challenges that need to be addressed by the sector. In particular, communication, which I've referred to, excessive delays, ineffective diagnosis, ineffective repairs, and in particular, poor records. So often, poor complaint handling and poor records go hand in hand, and improving data and intelligence in this space as well as others, other complaint areas is vitally important. Our evaluation that we published last week obviously set out 10 key tests, as we described them, for landlords who are evaluating against those recommendations. I won't repeat those 10 tests, but there are some really important work there, particularly around engagement with residents and developing communications, which I'd strongly encourage landlords to consider. So a few thoughts to leave you with. The first is there will be, and evidently is, lots of work around developing systems as part of the response on damp and mould. But it's important not to lose sight of culture. Culture, behaviour and attitudes, I think, are integral to some of these issues. And if you like, damp and mould is a litmus almost for kind of what is the culture like in a landlord when engaging and responding to residents. Indeed, when I was writing that original Spotlight report, we did sessions with landlords, and we also did sessions with residents to talk to them about the issue. And some of those residents had experienced in damp and mould and some had not. But for those who had not, their interest and their engagement clearly said to me that they saw this as a indicator on the attitude of their landlord, the trust that they could place in their landlord to deal with the issue were they to experience the issue. They were obviously concerned for the well-being of their neighbours who may be experiencing the issue. So I think getting the culture and behaviours around this right is actually in terms of building a stronger tenant-landlord relationship. The next thing to highlight, I think, is that use of technology. I've referred to it. It is evident that there's a number of different approaches which landlords are taking to incorporate technology into their response. That is good practice, and that's something that we share in that report. Perhaps more concern is the substitution, if you like, of lifestyle for other euphemisms. Now, look, obviously not using language like lifestyle, which can actually impede effective communication with residents when there is an important message to get across, is troubling. But it's also important not to find a substitute for the word lifestyle and then just keep saying and doing the same thing, because actually co-designing effective literature and information for residents is crucial, and therefore co-designing it with residents, I think, is something which is worth landlords considering if they're not doing so already. But also beneath those words was a risk that there was a lack of action, a lack of urgency, a lack of a comprehensive diagnosis, a lack of a real response, a lack of of being able to communicate to residents the steps that the landlord would take to address the issue, and building up effective communication and building up trust with the residents. So I do think that just changing the word lifestyle for a different word is not really an adequate response. It's about thinking about, well, what is proper engagement with our residents in this space. I would also like to stress next, perhaps, is the issue of disrepair claims alongside formal complaints. And when we published that original report, we emphasised the importance of landlords being clear on their approach to claims and complaints, and being clear on our jurisdiction. We are explicit that until a letter of claim is issued by the court, until the court papers are served, when it is in the pre-action stage, that does not impede an ombudsman investigating the issue, nor should it therefore mean that the landlord itself suspends complaint handling. Being clear the contents of the letter of claim at the pre-action stage, and being clear about the contents of the complaint, and seeing actually do they address all of the issues, because the complaint may address issues that are not in the claim letter, is also important. And the pre-action protocol itself on housing conditions is really clear that exploring alternative resolution, and indeed therefore use of an ombudsman service for social landlords, is a key expectation in terms of that pre-action protocol. Yes, we've seen some landlords really develop their approach, but there are still issues and poor practice that we see, miscommunication and confusion between legal teams and complaint teams, and the resident not being clear on who's handling what and how are they handling it. So I think, again, being really clear on legal claims and complaints alongside each other. There is still work to do, and there is also still work to do to make sure that landlords are, and I appreciate this can be challenging, but where there are access issues, are clear about their responsibilities under the Landlord and Tenant Act, and making sure that they fulfil those responsibilities. And then perhaps lastly, I'd like to close on a comment just around how do you structure all of these activities? How do you structure that within the organisation? One of the things which we have talked about as a service is the importance of policies and good policies to guide decision making. And certainly from those landlords that responded to our evaluation, about a third had developed a policy, and others were in the process of doing so. In total, about half of landlords were intending or had a dedicated policy in place on damp and mould. Now, we thought that a dedicated policy or framework, something that was comprehensive in response to damp and mould, so that the landlord was not overly reliant, for instance, on the repairs policy when there may be a non-structural issue that needs addressing. That we thought was a useful tool for landlords. Now, in itself, it's not the end of the story, because policies can sit on shelves and gather dust and not be read. So it's important that those policies are properly embedded, that people are engaged with them, that they're updated, but also that ultimately the landlord is really clear around the right culture and the right behaviours when an issue arises and how to respond. The policy is there to support sound decision making, but the culture, getting the right culture, will make sure, or should help ensure, that those decisions are sound and that the right actions and doing the right thing is occurring. So I would encourage landlords to think about whether they do need a policy to support that, whilst also being clear that having a policy isn't the full story, which I know many of you will more than know, but it's something I want to emphasize. I guess in conclusion, it's worth encouraging landlords to take every opportunity to demonstrate to their residents and demonstrate to the sector as a whole the actions which are being taken. because it's clear to me that landlords are reacting, they are doing things, and that story needs to be told. And certainly, I will use opportunities to stress that, but it's important for landlords themselves to do so as well. I wish you well today, and I look forward, hopefully, seeing you in person in the future. Take care. Thank you.